welcome back to the Fragments Silicon Reviews. Up this time is The Lady. Yes, that is the full title.
Yes, that is probably kind of a questionable choice for a full title.
Well, this is an entire game about questionable choices.
Mm-hmm.
Well, actually, no. According to the Steam page, this is actually a game about mental illness. Dealing with anxiety, depression, and panic attacks.
Mm-hmm.
Granted, you may not pick up on those themes because they're pretty well obscured by the whole surreal body horror of it all.
Surreal body horror, creepy doll thing.
But apparently the other ladies are representations of herself, false selves, struggling with a sense of identity. Once again, that's
fair enough.
Yeah. Once again, that's not something you would necessarily pick up on because you're probably screaming at all of the body horror. I mean, this game is designed to be unsettling, unpleasant, and it's anti-fun. But it is very specifically designed that way. From the controls are very clunky because it's keyboard only, and you've got to move with the WASD and aim your attack, which is this spirit headshot.
Yeah, you shake your head and some energy falls off, and that does damage for reasons.
I'm guessing repairing the psyche. Maybe her shots represent therapy.
Sure, maybe that's weird enough to be true here.
Yes, and you can shoot in three directions: left, right, and up. And that's kind of important because your first challenge is getting past glass. Representations of a broken mind, as that's shattered glass is usually fractured something. In this case, fractured mental state. Yeah. And apparently this is turned into an English literature course. But, and your goal, I suppose, is to repair her mind,
So the clunky controls are symbolic of the fact that you're not in total control of yourself?
Right. This game also boasts a noisecore soundtrack, which is, I suppose, a fancy way of saying really discordant noise.
Yeah, that's pretty much. I mean, there's a little bit more to it, but that's the main thing.
Yeah. Once again, that's all in service of the themes of the game. And that, it's that, this lady is going through what could generously be said to be a rough patch. And what's probably more accurately described as a complete fucking mental breakdown. And this game bills itself as an adventure game. It's not an adventure game in the traditional point and click sense. It's more
if it's an adventure game, it's an adventure game where your primary interface is basically a twin stick shooter.
Yeah, or a space shooter. Because boss encounters, or at least some boss encounters, switch over to fucking Galaga.
Sure, why not?
And actually controlled pretty decently, honestly. It wasn't amazing or anything, but it was definitely I could use this, and probably because the response times were actually good and stuff. But yeah, the whole spaceship part was just kind of out of place in terms of theming.
Yeah.
Anyway, but this is also a puzzle game in kind of a literal sense, in that you have to puzzle out what to do next.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, this game is really simple in terms of its design. Mostly, you're going to be finding your way by moving left and right a lot. Say that. I'm not exactly sure how far I got in the game. I know I got fairly significantly through, but once again, this being E3 week, didn't have a whole bunch of time to dedicate to actually playing games. Also, it's this game has some trickery going on here, because
it has a bit of the
you have a fail state, and then you have a, let's say, supreme fail state. That is to say, you have a certain amount of lives, and if you die enough, the game will just close. Yeah. And, the game is the same game every time. There's no procedural generation, there's no randomization, so once you go through a section, it gets a lot less interesting. Granted, the beginning parts you can get through pretty quickly, but once you get past the first boss, things get a bit more belabored, let's say. Let's see. I mean, I'm sure we could talk. We could do a whole focus on the each various element that's going on in the game, like we've been doing. But
yeah, there's a lot of symbolic stuff, but also there's the fact that this is a game for people to play, and as such, it's kind of clunky.
Yeah. But it's really about the journey and the experience, because your viewpoint character is also the lady, who's looking in at her own broken mind. Once again, the actual filter, there is a broken glass, literal broken glass in some of the areas, which once again shows a skewed viewpoint. And we can probably assume that this lady is currently residing in Arkham Asylum, given everything that's going on here. As far as pricing, well, the game is free, which is just as well.
Yeah, you have nothing to lose.
Yeah.
So if you don't enjoy this game, there's no commitment. That being said, there is some DLC. There's a wallpaper pack, which is also free. And if you actually want to get money to the developers, there's a whole host of people listed here in terms of developers and publishers. I'm not actually sure how many people were actually involved in this game. But the point of order is, it's got a soundtrack available for $1. Not really seeing the need to purchase this soundtrack independently, because
unless you're into noisecore.
Right.
Yeah.
Because this is definitely one of those soundtracks that's in service of the game, and yeah, it's unless you really like, noisecore.
Yeah, hey, if discordant music makes your brain work better, then I'd go for it.
Yeah. So overall, I give this game a rating of, this is very interesting, your mileage will vary. Might sound like a cop-out, but I mean, this, you're really not playing this game for the gameplay. This is definitely more on the narrative side of modern game design. it's up there with walking simulators, or the other such modern storytelling using game narrative type things.
Yeah, it's about the artistic experience, basically.
And once again, if you're not into disturbing imagery or really abstracted topics, or you get frustrated easily, because this game is not going to tell you what to do. You do have to figure out stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I will say not necessarily the puzzles get more elaborate, but there are more options in terms of the way forward. I think that's a good way of putting it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's definitely worth a play, but I couldn't, I couldn't say if it was for you, and that's for you to determine. It is at the very least an interesting project here that actually does have a sequel called The Grandfather. Will we review that? Maybe one day. I'm like, not on the list, and it's from what I've seen, it's definitely similar in terms of theming. It doesn't look exactly the same, but another time, let's say. So with that will conclude our review session. So coming up on the week ahead, it's back to normal. So we will be having a regular show on Wednesday. I know we've missed a couple, but we've been dealing with crippling injuries and the big industry events. But that being said, we're back on track. We no Tuesday/Friday show. Nothing scheduled for June on that front, but that'll be showing up in July. Just a heads up here in the here and now. Anyway, showing up on Wednesday, we'll be having Charlie McHenry of Trilobite Games. If that name sounds familiar to you, you're either a really old school gamer or you watch our show, because recently we did a review of The Seventh Guest 25th Anniversary Edition. And Charlie McHenry is the co-founder of the studio. I believe he's also the co-designer of The Seventh Guest, among other things. And yeah, we'll be talking about, The Seventh Guest, the game series, but we're also going to be talking about The Seventh Guest, the board game. Yeah, that is a thing.
That's a thing.
Yeah, that is a thing that exists. And it recently had a Kickstarter for an expansion pack. So yeah, we're going to be delving outside of the traditional milieu of this show, if only for part way, because we don't usually cover board games, but it's one of those things that's certainly adjacent enough for us to cover. But yeah, we'll be talking about their old games as well. So with that in mind, until Wednesday, I wish you good gaming.